This podcast is for financial professional use only and is not intended for use with the public. Material is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide tax, legal, or investment advice. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Ash Brokerage. Welcome to Accumulation to Activation, the podcast that breathes life into your retirement planning strategies. If you're an advisor aiming to elevate your practice, deepen client relationships, and stay ahead of retirement income trends, we'll help you capture the opportunities on your doorstep and increase your impact. Each episode, we'll unpack the forces reshaping our industry, from the $44 trillion generational wealth transfer and the evolution of income planning to behavioral shifts, legislative updates, and breakthrough solutions that redefine financial security. Here are your hosts, Mike McGlothlin and Tim Ash.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Accumulation to Activation, where I speak with Tim Ash on all things going from employment to enjoyment. Now, Tim, first of all, thank you to all of our audience for listening, and hope that you're enjoying the series. We're talking a lot about your phrase of employment to enjoyment. I think it's really important for our audience to understand that, because it's clear from my standpoint that the government is really pushing a lot of responsibility onto the typical American to take responsibility for their retirement. And maybe let's start off talking about some recent legislation like the Secure Act and the big, beautiful bill, and that, you know, it's up to everybody to kind of take responsibility for their own savings rate.
Well, what a nice way to warm me up here for this podcast.
Right deep into legislation. I like that.
Well, first of all, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And again, thank you to all that are dialing in and listening. And please know that we might be strong in our opinions, but we also love feedback. So please share your thoughts and anything that you'd like us to cover as a topic. I think that would be a great thing. Don't you think so, McG?
Yeah. Ping us and we will throw anything out there.
Terrific. Well, legislation. So I'll refer to it as triple B. Hopefully your bond rating is higher than that. But in any event, and I'm not a political person whatsoever, but really the big, beautiful bill really didn't change much of anything on the savings front. And I think what we should concentrate on is the Secure Act, and really dig more deeply into that, because there's so many things in that, and maybe you could speak to that, Mike, on what we'll call a Secure Act 2.0, and what you're seeing with respect to, like, you know, there were these things, stretch IRAs, and, you know, that's evolved. And I'm going to have a little fun play on the acronym of QLAC. So just want our audience to kind of lean in a little bit. But before then, why don't you share what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think that we're seeing a continued force of taking responsibility of your own savings. I think that was clear with the big, beautiful bill, Triple B, that I think when you take a look at any piece of legislation, you're always looking for unintended consequences, or what did it not do? And it did not change any of the levels of savings, which you've already pointed out. And that's really important. More importantly, I think that with Secure Act 2.0, which is more focused in on qualified funds and retirement, it did a lot of things with indexing of thresholds that had not been properly indexed for inflation. We talked about inflation a couple episodes ago, and kind of the hidden tax to everyone's qualified plans and everyone's retirement plans. But it also did take away the stretch provision on qualified funds. And so when we talk about some of the risk of qualified funds, you know, losing it, you know, giving it to charity, giving it away to others, or spending it, how do you pass it on from a legacy standpoint and do so effectively? That was greatly reduced so that you really only have about 10 years. That gives some other options that we're going to be talking about in future segments. But the reality here is that the loopholes are certainly closing, but that doesn't mean that it's not a need for planning, because planning, and then more importantly, longevity planning to take that longevity risk off. And longevity isn't just running out of money, but it's healthcare costs, it's long-term care, it's the legacy taxes to the next generation. How do we mitigate all of that? And how do we get that to the next generation? I think the Secure Act began addressing that, but I think it was also very clear of like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. American, we're going to give you some tools, but you've got to leverage them and you've got to use them. And that's where I think that our industry as financial advisors can be hugely, hugely impactful to middle America, not only just high net worth. So that's kind of my take on it.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I think there are these unused tools. And I opened with a little bit of, tongue in cheek on what the QLAC stands for. It doesn't mean quit losing assets consistently.
Nice.
Okay. It means you have an opportunity as an advisor. And I'm going to throw this out there to you as the advisor. A question and a test. What's the amount that each person is able to put into a QLAC today?
It's 210,000 plus threshold for inflation. Mm-hmm.
And it's capped, if I'm not mistaken, at 25% of the qualified plan. Is that correct, or did that change?
They took that away so that there's no longer the 25% cap. So it's up to 210.
See, I failed part of the exam, and I did that on purpose, because you'll go out on the web and you'll search for what's a QLAC and how does it work, and is there a cap, is there not a cap? But it's grown significantly. It's now 210,000 per person, regardless of the size of the qualified plan. Now, let me throw this out there to you as advisors. When the government has advised you on the maximum amount you can put into a qualified plan, what is it you advise your clients to do? Mike, would you like to answer that?
You would probably maximize it to take full advantage of any matching contribution or things like that, or any maximum deduction, right?
So if our government is telling us, hey, we took off this cap, they're saying something, right? You said it earlier. They want the American population to take on this challenge, this problem of longevity. So they're opening up this lovely avenue for us to maximize transferring a portion of one's qualified plan into a qualified longevity annuity contract that you do not have to start until your age 85. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people that said, hey, I don't want to take this much out, or I don't need it. And this is a way to defer this down the road, but also address, I think, the most important part of this conversation, which is this. People are living longer, and when they live longer, there are going to be other things that enter their life, primarily healthcare and other things along those lines that create and add stress. This is a way to take a portion of the portfolio off the table. And I'd love for you to, talk about that. You mentioned inflation adjusted and all that, but why are we not talking about maximizing this great benefit that you would do if it were a Roth or a 401k or any other qualified plan asset? Maximize this, use a portion of the client's assets to cover it. So I throw it back to you.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to add one thing to your comments. One of the things that I think we have to come to grip with in this country is that Social Security, while it will be funded in some way, shape, or form because it's funded by tax dollars, right? But we're staring at a reduction of Social Security benefits that I think is largely unavoidable unless you have significant tax or changes from 67 to age 70. There are some things that we could do, but I don't believe that any congressperson is really willing to pull those levers to do that. And so I believe that we are steering at some level of reduction of benefit. I think it's also very eerily similar that they moved the limit to QLAC to 210, just as a round number. We talked early on that, a third of everybody's household is in qualified assets, $1 million guy next door. And ironically, about 21% of your assets can go to QLAC. That helps take some of the pressure off of Social Security because we're taking longevity off the table. If you look at Social Security, it is simply a huge annuity for each and every person. So now, to answer your specific question, I have always said QLAC is the most underutilized tool in the retirement income planning toolkit. It is, and I think that advisors don't look at that because when these things first came out, they were introduced in 2014. And interest rates in 2014 were still being depressed by the financial crisis. Then we have the pandemic, and we have at some point in time a 75 basis point 10-year treasury. While they were pretty competitive at that point, over the last 3 years, they have absolutely exploded. So on a $210,000 deposit for a male age 65 and deferring that to age 80, that payout is $52,600. That's a 24% payout, and that's guaranteed for the rest of your life. That is $24,000 that is not getting drawn out of your AUM starting in 15 years. It's not $15,000 or $52,000 being depleted in any way, shape, or form. It's a huge benefit to take that longevity play off the table. If you did that inside of a variable annuity with today's current payout rates at age 80, you would have to have an asset growth of 9.34% after tax, after fees inside of that variable annuity. You're not going to do that without being ultra aggressive and having that guaranteed all the way for 15 full years. There's no income rider out there that I know of on a variable annuity chassis that goes for a full 15 years, guaranteed at 9.34%. So I think that this and the quality of mortality credits and the use of that is just being underutilized by the Financial Services Committee. So that's kind of my take on it.
I'm glad you brought up Social Security because guess what else is going to happen? And a lot of people don't understand how Social Security works. So let's say you have two beneficiaries on Social Security and one passes away. The QLAC can also be a way to pick up that additional lost income. You and I both know, and I'm sure 98% of the advisors on this call know, that you step into the higher benefit of the, of that beneficiary on Social Security. But I have yet to have someone say, "Hey, mine was 35,000. This one coming in was 19,000," and you lose you lose the 19,000. A QLAC is such a great way to supplement that lost income later in life when you need it most, when healthcare is becoming more expensive. And inflation is the other big thing, right? And inflation in healthcare is going to be continually one of the biggest risks that all of us face in our journey on planet Earth. It just is. And the QLAC is able to solve it. And I think if an advisor would just really dig deeply into what it does, what it is, and more importantly, how do I open the conversation up with my client? And I'm going to say this, and I know at the end we like to ask, "Hey, what's my take?" I'm going to give you one take right now. I would say this if I'm an advisor: we need to cover tail risk with a small portion of your portfolio. And we have a tax code that is friendly and allowing us to do so. Let's take advantage of it. It's that $210,000 per person. Let's just do it. Even if you do it for one person, you're going to be thanked later on in the life journey of that family. I assure you.
Absolutely. And I also want to point out to our audience, there's so many cascading benefits of taking this opportunity. One is you're deferring RMDs all the way out if you choose to do so at age 85. That reduction of RMDs helps your Medicare Part B premium through the modified adjusted gross income. That is a kind of a tax in itself, because the more that you earn, the more that you have to pay. What a great way to leverage that. Also, QCDs were indexed finally. So every person can do up to $108,000 per year per person. And that's going to continue to be indexed. So for your clients, I would encourage everybody to go into their tax return, look for people who are over the age of 70, who are taking RMDs that don't need it. And then also for those people on their itemized deduction who are making charitable contributions to their churches, to the American Heart Association, those can be done directly, and that can reduce your modified adjusted gross income and have a compounding effect, while all at the same time taking longevity off the table that you talked about. So a lot of different rippling effects to something that's really so simple and so good.
And isn't this about conversations and advising families? And our job here, as we've always said, with accumulation to activation, is education. And that's what we hope you're getting from this. And, I just really appreciate the ability, hey, yes, of course we prepare for these conversations on podcasts, but 8 times out of 10, we're going to meander off the script and really pick up on things that really matter, to the advisor, to have the conversation with the client. And if you're not comfortable having the conversation with the client on this topic, it's new, it's fresh, you don't want to stub your toe, call in one of our retirement income consultants. That's what we are here for. We're here to help you help others. And so, with that, any closing comments? We want to keep these to 20 minutes because I know we look good, I know, on the podcast here, but we sound better on to the ear, right, McG?
Yeah, we sound better over your car stereo for sure. So hopefully people are driving in between appointments and stuff. And again, we appreciate you listening. And I encourage you, if there's a question that you want Tim and I to address, shoot it to us. We'll be more than happy to make that a upcoming podcast. So I just think it's so important to have that conversation, to look for the opportunities and maybe better leverage dollars. So again, we appreciate everybody listening. We want to respect everybody's time. And I encourage everyone, if you find this useful, subscribe it on your favorite podcast platform. And I look forward to our next conversation with them.
Thanks, Mike. Always a pleasure.
This episode of Accumulation to Activation was produced by Ash Brokerage. For more on the most pressing and critical issues facing financial advisors today, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a colleague. For more resources, visit us at ashbrokerage.com or reach out to our team at 800-589-3000. Let's start a strategic conversation about how you can be more efficient with your retirement income and legacy planning solutions. Insurance product guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurer. Tax laws and Social Security rules are complex and subject to change. Clients should consult their tax and legal advisors. Product features and availability vary by state and carrier.